I have dropped my major. I dropped my minor. I changed everything in my life. I think this is, I feel like I'm supposed to be in this direction, but I don't know. And now maybe I've done the wrong thing. Like, am I crazy? Like this is the shipwreck. Who am I supposed to be? I feel like I want to do this thing with a congregation and life of the church, but that sounds crazy to me. Like, so that's one of my students in the middle of the shipwreck, trying to form her identity. Right? The other one is a student who was here several years ago, a gay student who came to my office, really just distraught, because the student was a very faithful person, a devout Christian, wanted to be a Christian, but didn't think he could be because of his sexuality and orientation. And he was just in the midst of the middle of the shipwreck. And he was like, I don't think I can make it, and I don't know what to do. I want to be a Christian, but I don't think I can. I said, I think you can. Like, there are lots of people who are Christian and gay in the world. Really? Yeah, there are. I can be that? Like, this is the conversation. So I said, yes, you can be that. Oh, I can be that. Like, that was it.
Lack. And this skill involves learning from struggle, learning from the shipwreck, learning from making sense of what happens in our lives, especially the stuff that we didn't count on. And Tanishi Coates wrote a wonderful thought piece back in March. It was called A Quick Note on Getting Better at Difficult Things. And he was reflecting on his progress in learning and speaking French. And he said, you know, in the process, highs and lows come and go. Those people.
Yeah, I guess I attended a Celebrate Recovery meeting last year, and there were people there who were addicted to ice cream. And there were people there who were addicted to crack. And it felt odd to me. I've worked in the substance abuse field for a long time. And it just felt odd. I just felt that, you know, people who were addicted to certain TV shows, and I'm not talking pornography, I'm talking Modern Family, or ice cream, or, you know, it just somehow trivialized what someone who's addicted to methamphetamines or OxyContin is going through in trying to address their addiction.
Those may have been folks who just needed something to do.
So they would need ice cream.
They might have found the methamphetamine people entertaining.
I agree with almost everything you said. Maybe for the same, maybe for different reasons. I tend to be kind of a science guy, and when we look at real addictions, I don't know that, you know, watching Snoopy on TV is an addiction. I guess it depends how it affects your life. But all addiction, I think, is chemical addiction. But it's chemicals that are released in between our ears. You know, the pleasure centers of the brain are activated in very normal ways. You know, when we eat, we get a spike of basal dopamine. But when we use methamphetamine, we get a much bigger spike. And so it ingrains that behavior and increases the likelihood that behavior is going to happen again. So I think anything that acts in the pleasure centers of the brain puts us at risk for addiction in the way that we understand it. But I certainly see where the effects of having a bowl of ice cream every night, not being able to not do that, is very different than the effects of shooting heroin in your own, or smoking crack cocaine. So I think,
and the treatment of it is different too.
It is indeed. It is indeed. I think that's kind of where I was going there. Orthopedic surgeon. You know, he may be able to see somebody with a broken finger and also with a broken back, but the treatments are going to look very different. And so while the problem's a broken bone, the way that it affects somebody's ability to live their life and the way that you approach fixing it is going to look very different.
Thank you.
In the last session we had, we were talking about different levels of intrusion of mental health diagnosis or situations. Whereas you might have one person who goes and talks to a counselor one time and because they process the problem, they're feeling okay and they keep it moving. And then there are other people who need to go to inpatient treatment. And I think that same thing applies when we're talking about the way things are treated when we're talking about addictions. But I also definitely agree that they all need to be put in the same categorization as far as addictions. There are different levels of it, but they're still addictions, because when you start separating it, then we're contributing to that thing we've been talking about of this is terrible, and it will contribute to someone not speaking on it when they need to, and that's the way that folks come to get help. Comments, questions? All right, I'm going to go to my paper.
I want to say I had an experience where a young man, he was severely and persistently mentally ill, and he had a chemical dependency problem. And he asked me in front of his psychiatrist, he said, I told them that I wanted to be Buddhist when he was admitted because he knocked his father's teeth out. And he said, they told me it was a part of my delusion. And he looked at me, he said, right, I can be Buddhist if I want to, right? And in that moment, I felt really hurt for him because I thought all of us have a choice. I mean, I thought everybody had a choice, but this was a professional who told him he didn't have that free will. That's what they were saying by saying it's just part of your delusion. So I just brought that because sometimes we'll say certain things or we'll have someone tell us things that professionals have done. So you add church and you add professionals and you add all these things over a lifetime of people telling you what you can and cannot be. It can create a psychosis in and of itself.
I said something earlier about the motives behind what we do. And you just spoke to the question I was going to ask next. I'd like to hear some conversation that can come from this side also about the power dynamics that are involved in this process. With us being members of professionals or members of faith-based communities, we talk about it a lot when we're looking at counseling sessions, how there's a power differential and you're responsible for your behavior. But I've worked with folks, and I'm a Christian, but I had a problem with this. I worked with a lady one time. She would go in the sessions and she would pray for the folks in the session without them opening this up on their own. And she would say, you need to do this, you need to get to church, providing the answer, which I think is the wrong process anyway. We're supposed to be helping you guide yourself versus pointing you to the answer, because you'll get more from that process. So I'd like to hear a little bit of that conversation within the context of addictions, how we have to be responsible about that power dynamic, or whatever else comes from the power process.